Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're just off to a secret location because today is a photo shoot day, but I thought while we're on our way there I might just talk a little bit about my background and where I started and how I've ended up where I am today as an owner operator. Shall we start from leaving school?
Yeah.
So I left school in 2010 and I didn't go college or university. I literally left school, had my 6 weeks holiday off and went straight into the army as I was 15 when I signed up for the army, 15 and 9 months exactly. So as soon as I turned 16, that was me gone. Moved away from home to do phase 1 training as a little 16-year-old. But the army was all I ever wanted to do ever since I was about 10-year-old. And it's all down to my brother. So my brother joined cadets when he was 12. He managed one day, came home crying, saying it was horrible, it was the worst thing he ever done. And from that day, I said, when I'm 12, I'm going to join cadets and I'm going to do better than you. But anyways, long story short, I spent a few years in cadets and then joined the army as soon as I could.
Talk, okay, get your hoods up, okay, get your spit guards up, okay, get everything up, okay, cook as you can, okay, downwind, keeping your back to the wind, okay, most you spread out, okay, stay in your ranked, okay, get done as quick as possible. Like, less fucking around, alright, I'll make you fucking run now.
I spent 7 years altogether in the army. I'd only managed to do one tour of Afghanistan, which was Herrick 17, which was a winter tour, and it was such a brilliant experience. Very different, but it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Loved it. And after my 7 years in the army, I sadly got medically discharged for a couple of...
Just rewind a bit.
Yeah.
And so what was it like going to Afghanistan for a lot of people who obviously have no idea what it's actually like to, you know, go to a war zone, like when you're actually deployed as a soldier?
It was a mixture of different emotions. I was obviously excited to go. Like, I know that sounds crazy because I was literally getting sent out to Afghanistan in a war zone, but I was so excited. But at the same time I was a bit nervous and a little bit scared due to the fact that 1 week before I actually deployed out in Afghan, the camp I was going to had just been bombed and a few people had just died on the airfield. So obviously all that goes through your head, but in a way I knew I was going to be safer than most just because I was always going to be based on Camp Bastion. I wasn't ever going to go off Camp Bastion. So yeah, it was a mixture of emotions, and I had a really hard time out in Afghanistan due to certain individuals that I went out there with. One of them being my staff sergeant at the time, not mentioning no names, but yeah, he gave me a really difficult time to the point I didn't want to be there anymore because of him. So I ended up only doing 4 months instead of 6 out there because I ended up getting sent home. It was due to an injury as well, but the staff sergeant situation, that was a second reasoning for getting sent home early, which yeah, that ruined it. But I'd done the 4 months and I enjoyed it apart from the odd bits, but yeah, it was really good apart from that. Like, I wasn't even going to speak about it, but I might as well tell you a little bit about what went on. So basically my staff sergeant, I'm not going to mention any names, he was married, lived on camp, and this all started before we even got deployed. He was asking me, when we're out there, will we do things together? Obviously I can't say much on here, and obviously my answer was no. Like, I was very shocked and I just left that there. This was all said at a leaving party, so bearing in mind he did have alcohol in him, so I thought maybe it was just drunk talk, so I just left it there, didn't say anything. And then obviously we get deployed out there, and this staff sergeant of mine, so basically we worked in a medical squadron. We worked next door to the Royal Free Hospital, and there had to be 2 members of staff in there at all times, meaning 2 of us had to do a night duty. Well, he kept changing the rota to make sure it was always me and him on night duty together, which I didn't feel comfortable with, knowing what he'd said before getting deployed out there. Yeah, so there was lots of other things to it. There was comments said out there that made me feel uncomfortable. It was him following me about outside of work, trying to capture me in like ISO containers and things like that. It just went on and on and on, to the point I didn't even want to get up and go to work in Afghanistan. I couldn't have felt more lonely than I did, because I was scared to speak up. So a day before my R&R, which is a 2-week break, you get to fly home for 2 weeks before coming back, I thought I'd speak out to one of my higher members of staff, thinking that I could say what I needed to say, go home for my 2-week break, come back, and maybe it will have been sorted. But no, what they'd done was, the following day, the day my flight was to fly home, they pulled me into a meeting along with said staff sergeant. So we were basically sat opposite each other, and they were questioning me about what he'd done, what he'd said. And as I was trying to explain, as hard as it was knowing he was sat right in front of me, he was just sat there looking at me dead in the eye, denying everything. And it was just awful. It was such an awful experience. It was hard enough to speak up anyway. But that being said, I did get to fly home that same day. I came back 2 weeks later, and it still carried on. So at this time I was suffering with back injuries anyway, and I ended up getting sent home a few weeks later. So that's that.
If any girls are watching this that are serving in the army right now, that are probably experiencing anything similar, what advice would you like give them in their situation right now? If you could go back and do anything differently about how far you took it, and you know, because obviously they didn't take it very seriously, and I presume you didn't take it any further.
Yeah, well, when I got sent back, it was pretty much my at the time they were just saying, oh, it's word for word, there's no actual proof, so nothing was done about it. And everyone that I went out to Afghan with, they came back 2 months later, every single one of them got promoted and I didn't. And obviously that hit even worse, because I thought, yes, I've only done the 4 months out there, but why should what happened to me dictate like my career in the army as well? But advice, if any girls are going through the similar situation, try and gather any evidence, even if it's like secretly filming or secretly getting voice recordings, just anything you can gather as evidence, do it and speak up. Like, don't let it dictate your life and how your career goes, because it's not worth it. It really is not worth it. As minor as what happened to me, because nothing major did happen to me, luckily, but as minor as what did happen, it's not left me. I still get the anger now, this day, for everything that happened, and I wish I could have gone differently about it. But I don't know, obviously I left the army back in 2017. I don't know how much it's changed now, whether there's more support, I don't know. But
I mean, I'm not sure of the exact incident, but I did hear something on the news in the past few years of a girl in the army suffering abuse at the hands of one of her staff sergeants or something like that. So I presume I'd say it's probably quite a common thing that happens, maybe.
it is, like, when I come back from Afghan, I then moved from my squadron and I actually worked in the welfare as part of the welfare team, and a lot of young females actually came through our doors. Didn't speak to me directly, but I've heard a lot of similar things go on, some even worse than what happened with me. One girl even took this man to court and he was found guilty of, obviously, I can't really say much with it being a YouTube video, but yeah, he got found guilty and got charged, lost his whole career for what he done. But loads of girls I've heard have gone through similar, if not worse. It does happen a lot in the army.
So moving on from that, so you came back, you served the rest of your time, and then obviously we met. So we met on Tinder when Nicole was still serving, and yeah, so from then on, I mean, even when I was with you, I noticed a lot of, you know, they kind of, there was a lot of bullying going on with regards to you, and you know,
and the higher ranks, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was always the higher ranks thinking that there was somebody.
Yeah.
And just trying their best to give us privates.
Like, no disrespect to anyone who served in the army, but all these people, they get a promotion. Some of these people, it goes to their head, and they charge about thinking that, I don't know what they think they are.
Yeah.
Like, outside of that uniform, they're absolutely nothing. And you know, they're the type of people that obviously, you know, abusing girls and stuff like that. You know, I think more needs to be done about it, and more girls need to speak up. But moving on from that,
I know, it's a bit morbid. We've chatted a bit too much about that. We'll move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Ben was saying, we met on Tinder while I was still serving in the army, but you met me at quite a difficult time because I was already suffering with mental health. And obviously you'd come into my life and you had to deal with a lot. Yeah. Like, I was off sick from work. I was going through a really, really tough time. I'm not going to go into details about that because I think we've gone into enough details, but I'm surprised he's still here after the amount of crap I put him through. But it was all down to the mental health. But I got the help that I needed. Luckily, serving in the army, things are sped up on that side of things. So I had counselling, I was put on medication, but yeah, I was suffering. So I got diagnosed with anxiety OCD. Now, I know a lot of people don't know about anxiety OCD, so I'm gonna go into it a little bit because I've explained this to people before and then they've realised that they have something similar. So anxiety OCD is, I'm not saying it's exactly the same for everybody, but I used to think of the worst possible things that could ever happen in my life and I'd obsess over them thoughts. So one of them being me gruesomely harming someone in my family, someone that I love, and I'd obsess over that thought to the point that I would get panic attacks and I couldn't breathe, because I'd end up thinking, why am I thinking this thing? Am I ever going to act on these thoughts? Blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I'd go into such a bad state of panic attacks and stuff. But yeah, I've learned to understand why that happens, and you obsess over the worst possible things that could happen in your life and you try your best to avoid those situations. But yeah, that's a little bit about it. Obviously there's a hell of a lot more to it.
Obviously you got medically discharged from the army.
Yes.
And then we were considering what career you'd take from that point onwards, and you was considering all sorts of things like driving instructor,
Yeah, there was
warehouse manager, or...
Well, no, I'd done the warehouse management course because it was kind of part of the I forgot what it's all called. Part of like leaving, you get courses to do to help you on the outside, and that was one of them. So I'd done my warehousing courses, but then I went to a careers fair, and I really wanted to be a tree surgeon, but when I walked up to that stall where these tree surgeon people were, I felt as if they looked at me as if to say like, you're a female, you're going to be no good in this job. And I felt, I don't know what it was, but I felt really uncomfortable, which then turned me away from that. But yeah, I was looking around, I was looking at doing a car driver learner, what they're called?
A driving instructor.
A driving instructor for cars. And then I wanted to work in the prisons, but then obviously the different shift patterns wouldn't have worked. I'd love to work in a prison, you know. I'd also love to be a police interceptor. I would love that. That is like, I would jump at the chance of being a police interceptor.
I was working as a HGV driver at the time, and I said to her, look, you've obviously got your licence, why don't you just get a job as a lorry driver here, where I'm working for now. At least you can earn decent money, and then, you know, if you don't want to do it and find something else, then at least you've earned some money in the meantime. And you was like, oh, I don't want to be a lorry driver, I don't want to be a lorry driver. You was like so against the idea of being a lorry driver. Yeah. And then, you know, you started doing it, you got the job, and you came in, you started doing all the shunting in the yard, learning to reverse trailers. That was a whole experience of its own, a lot of tears and frustration. Oh,
it took me months to learn how to reverse a trailer into a bay. That was the most frustrating thing ever. But I got there in the end, and now I'm a wicked reverser.
And then she ended up just absolutely loving it, didn't you? Like,
I absolutely fell in love with the job. Like, it's one of them jobs, like I had no idea I'd end up loving it. I just thought, oh, truck driving's all I can really do. I've only got that to fall on, so this is it. But yeah, once I actually got the hang of it, I loved it. I think, do you know what made me love it even more? Like, again, because truck driving is such a male dominated job, I think I've always just loved being a female doing a job that mainly men do, because I want to show other women that it doesn't matter what job it is, whether it's mainly like male dominated, women can do it too. It's no different for us. But yeah, I just want to see more women on the road. But I've always tried to like share my experience as a truck driver on all my social medias, and I know a lot of girls since following me on social media have gone on to go and get their HGV licenses, and I absolutely love that. Like, yeah, I think I'm in a way I'm proud of myself. So anyway, I ended up driving for a company for around about 5 years. Absolutely loved it, but during the last year working there, for most of you that have been following me and know what I do, know that I've got a subscription based platform. I'm not going to say the name on here, but yes, that didn't go down too well with the company I was working for. Even though I only done it in my own spare time, it was nothing to do with work at the time. But obviously work had found out what I was doing. I got put on a 12-month warning order because they said I was putting the company in disrepute, and they stopped me from going to Truckfest, which we had been going to every year since I'd been there, all down to what I was doing. They didn't like that. So then I thought to myself one day, because I was already making more money doing my other job than what I was actually doing the truck driving, but because I loved the truck driving, I it was such a hard decision to leave, but I thought, I'm not being treated like this. So I did. One day I went in and I just chucked my keys at them. I said, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not being treated like this.
Let's just rewind slightly. So before you handed your notice in, you'd gone down to 4 days a week, hadn't you?
Yeah, so I stopped working Fridays.
So it was kind of a gradual thing. So you stopped working Fridays, obviously, because you was making good money on the other platform, and
yeah. I think at the time I was looking at the truck driving as some sort of safety net.
yeah. I think when you've worked all your life, like, you know, we have, leaving a job to go on your own is a massive, like, it feels like a massive risk, doesn't it? You think, oh, what if it doesn't carry on, you know, what you're doing doesn't carry on paying, but it always does, doesn't it? And also, like, during that time where you was working 4 days a week, you'd just bought a new car, hadn't you?
Yeah, so I bought a Jaguar F-Pace, absolutely loved it.
And obviously, like, you turned up at work in that, and a brand new car, and going down to 4 days a week. There were a few people that got very
They got really
jealous, really sour about it. Older people as well, like, not even younger people.
Yeah, so there was an older driver there.
Yeah.
I'd never done nothing wrong to him ever. I'd always been nice to him. And he'd always been nice to me up until I drove into work with my new car. But from that point, he was literally, well, I'll start from the beginning because I didn't know who was doing this to start off with. But in the key cupboard where our work for the day, our paperwork gets hung up, we all have our own, like, registration numbers and a clipboard. So I would come in every morning, my paperwork would be missing or it would be trampled on the floor. And this was going on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and there's a camera in there. So I obviously went to one of the managers and said, can you check this camera on such and such dates, tell me who's chucking my paperwork? Or
well, no, first I caught him, didn't I? So
oh, did you?
Yeah, before we actually got the cameras checked, I got in before we kind of knew who it was,
but we couldn't put a finger on it.
So I got in one morning just before he'd pulled into the yard, and I went straight into the key cupboard and I checked Nicole's paperwork was hanging on her registration in the correct place. I left the key cupboard with my keys and paperwork. I then watched him go into the key cupboard, and as he came back out and went into the toilet, I went back into the key cupboard and her paperwork was on a different peg. He'd moved it, and I knew then it was 100% him. I caught him red-handed, and I really wanted to say something, but at the time I really wanted, you know, to have a good reputation at that company, so I didn't do anything that I shouldn't have done. So we went through all the right channels to complain about it, but they didn't really.
Nothing ever got done about it.
Nothing really. They had a little word of him, and he really couldn't give a reason why he was doing it. Strange behaviour.
It wasn't just that though. So he was going to the same delivery points knowing that the people that worked there would see me at some point, and he was going there saying, like, just spreading rumours that weren't true to these people that worked there, so that when I turned up they'd be like, oh, such and such said this about you, is this true? And I'd be like, what? No. And I knew exactly who it had come from because they even described him. But yeah, it was just people like that. They got really sour. I got really fed up with working there because even when all of this was happening and I was telling management what was happening, nothing was getting done about it. So yeah, I was just getting treated really shitty in that last year. So I didn't even hand my notice in. I was that sick, I was that angry. I just went into the office, chucked the keys, asked the workshop for a screwdriver so I could take all my stuff off the truck that I'd put on, and drove out and never went back. But I think that was the best decision I had ever made, because I've gone from working full time, like 12, 13 hours a day, to having a life full of freedom. I've got so much family time, and I could not be happier.
We started truck class haulage. Well, it was truck class at the time, and we were doing just the clothing. You know, so I was focusing more on that. You was focusing on your more like the subscription based service, and it got to a point where this year we just said, let's, you know, we still love lorry driving, and so we thought we'd start on our own, didn't we?
Yeah, well, I never actually gave up lorry driving. I think I took about between 6 and 8 months off, and then I'd missed driving too much that I actually signed up to an agency. So I was doing a lot of agency driving, like in my spare time. And yeah, like Ben said, it just got to a point where we wanted to do our own thing, obviously knowing that this subscription based platform, we look at it as having an expiry date. It's not something I want to be doing for a long time. So while we are doing it, while we're making the money, why don't we look at building our own business, using the money to make our own business? So we thought, well, why not buy a truck? So it's took us what, about a year to save up for a truck and everything else that you have to do. So Ben's obviously, you've done your courses and stuff.
Yeah.
So you're now a transport manager.
So I've had to, well, I didn't have to, but I did my transport manager's course, obviously, because paying a transport manager is around £300 to £400 a month that we didn't need to spend. I thought, you know, I'll put myself through the course, and did it, which I've passed now. I'm just waiting for the certificate, and then I can change that over on our own licence. So yeah, it's been a massive learning curve going from a driver to an owner operator. Massive learning curve, and you know, we're still learning every day. You know, trying to do things properly, and yeah, and trying to get work as well. It's not
hard old game.
It's not actually easy to get work. You know, there's a lot of people running trucks out there on a loss just for the sake of having the work, which is mental. But I suppose bigger companies can afford to do that, whereas us, you know, on our own
with one truck
running it at a loss is not ideal. So
I mean, we can be very, very grateful that we've got the other businesses keeping us going.
Yeah.
If we didn't have them, oh my god, we'd be in a shitstorm right now.
Massive respect to anyone who goes out as an owner operator with no other income coming in. You know, my advice to anyone who's thinking about being an owner operator, I would seriously think about it and make sure you've got a lot of money in the bank, because, you know, if we didn't have other incomes, you'd soon run out of money.
Yeah.
It's not easy to get work, and anyone who's out there doing it, massive respect to them, because it's really not easy, is it?
No. Even curtain side of work, right? We've just been offered a job today, and we worked out the fuel cost would cost us about £500 to do this run.
Well, it's 2 runs, yeah.
It's 2 runs, but the fuel alone would have cost us, I think it was £510 or something.
Yeah.
But then we were only going to get paid £625 for 2 days' work. That is.
Yeah. I mean, you could have probably squeezed it in a real long day if you got on well, but still, like,
there's just no money in it.
Yeah, like, and you know, we appreciate any offers of work obviously people give us, but it just goes to show you that, you know, there's not loads of money in all the work. You know, some jobs, obviously there are good paying jobs out there, but I think a lot of people are ruining it for themselves doing these jobs for so cheap, you know, as backloads, like it's any cheaper doing it as a backload. Like, too many people are doing these backload rates. I don't know where they get this backload diesel from, but it's the same price here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, but we're lucky that we've got other income, and also, you know, we're trying to build the YouTube up. We just thought it'd be a good opportunity to do a bit of a video on Nicole's background.
Yeah, hopefully I've not bored you to death, but I just know, obviously I get a lot of stick on social medias, and it's from people that don't know me, don't know what I've been through, and I just thought I'd do a little video explaining my life basically, and what I've done, what I've been through, and how I got to where I am now. yeah. But anyway, on a brighter note, that's me done rambling on. But before you go, I just want to show you my new stickers. So these are going to be on the Truck Class website for anyone that wants one. I can't even get them out, but yeah, these are my new stickers if anybody wants some. Just head to the website. You can also find our merch on there. We do all sorts, like hoodies, t-shirts, gilets, hats. I don't know what else, I can't think off the top of my head. But yeah, go and check it out, guys, and thanks for listening to my life. Hope you enjoyed it and I haven't bored you to death. I'll see you on the next video, and I will guarantee it will be more interesting than this one.